We're starting off episode 24 with the twins in the library trying to crack the password of the author's computer. And right off the bat we get a hint that this episode is going to center around sock puppets, with one of them being stitched onto Mabel's hoodie. To once again show its importance to the author, the boot up symbol is made to look like a simplified version of the portal that we see under the mystery shack. When we first get introduced to Gabe, he's playing the keyboard, but he's not pressing any of the keys correctly. They don't match up with the melody that's playing at all, so he's probably just using playback from the keyboard itself. The puppet play he's performing is also quite intimate, considering it's kids who are watching him. And I'm probably not the only one who sees it that way, but he's already giving off some major weirdo vibes.
Hey, guess who's Mabel? I am! Care to learn more?
After Mabel delivers the smooth pickup line, we get another red flag from Gabe when he tells her that people used to call him Puppet Crazy Gabe, which we'll get to see later is not an exaggeration. But before moving on with the love story, we switch back to Dipper, who's trying to crack the password for the computer, using 9 input presses to do so, which would either mean that they animated one too many input presses because the password is only 8 symbols long, or that he has to press enter every time he enters a password. All of this might seem arbitrary, but this led to me calculating how many possible combinations there even are for the password. So bear with me on this one. If we say that every symbol in the password could either be a number from 0 to 9, or a letter from the Roman alphabet, meaning from A to Z, so 26 possibilities, and we say that the password could just be gibberish, we would end up with a total of 2,821,109,970,456 possible combinations. If we then use a typical typing speed of 35 words per minute, or 28 or so with looking up words and the arrow screens he gets, we would end up with 191,693.16 years of non-stop typing. So all in all, he would probably never guess the password without any major hints like knowing the name of the author or something. Alex Hirsch confirmed that the first name of the author is the password for the computer, by the way. When they're leaving the library, they also don't carry the laptop with them, which would suggest that they just left it on the desk. Now we continue into a montage of Mabel trying to piece together the puppet show that she promised Gabe, and Dipper simultaneously helping her and trying to still figure out the password. While all of that is happening, the calendar pages for the passing days fly by, but the dates that are shown don't align with the entry in the journal for this episode, which is from the 23rd of July. The continuity error here is that the only Wednesday the 13th in 2012, the year the show set in, is in June, meaning they not only missed a few days, but they missed more than a month. Right after seeing Dipper completely mentally deteriorate, the gang's sitting together in the living room helping out Mabel with her sock opera. And I don't know why that is, but Wendy seems to have a tendency to look completely zooted, like in this scene, and also in the bunker episode when they went down into the bunker for the first time. And there are probably a few more times where she did as well in past episodes, but I just missed it.
Not even gonna ask.
Yep, same. Little continuity check, the ripped poster from Boys Crazy is still on the wall. While Dipper is sitting on the roof, it looks like the computer is plugged in somewhere, but a few minutes later the cable is attached to the back of it. So it's probably just another little error. Of course, Bill chimes in when Dipper is desperate to find the password, and I gotta commend him for his appearance. This whole interaction was done in such a fittingly ominous way, with a deep background bass and no second without weirdness. Though I gotta say that the severed head part is maybe a bit much for the young target audience, but hey, I won't complain. Another slight hint at Bill being clairvoyant when he predicts that Dipper will wake up screaming. So I try to find out what Candy actually says here, but it's really hard to get a fitting translation for something that someone's saying. And the problem is translating the subtitles back to Korean doesn't yield anything close to what Candy is saying. So we'll just have to assume that the translation in this case is correct. Right after Zeus gets definitely seriously injured, we return to the twins for some more sibling bickering when Mabel decides to break her promise to Dipper to help him with the password. So they tell each other that the other one's obsessed, and yeah, I actually have to agree this time. With both of them. On the one hand, Mabel is way too obsessed with getting on the good side of Gabe. On the other hand, Dipper is definitely too obsessed with chasing every little thing he finds in the journal just to find out what happened to the author. So all in all, they both have a point, but I think it's still sad that she just dropped him after he helped all week. It might not look like it, but these tickets are very important foreshadowing for later on in the episode. Before even getting to this episode, I already read a theory about how Bill made Dipper hallucinate this message and the whole data deletion thing. The theory is that Bill wanted to use this to push Dipper to make the deal that we will get to in a few seconds. So my 2 cents is that it generally seems plausible, though I don't see that much real evidence supporting it besides 2 things. The first one, he appears right after this message pops up, which even though he said he would be watching Dipper seems awfully convenient. The second one isn't anything concrete, but just the fact that the laptop is still counting down even though most other things stop moving or working all together together when Bill stopped time like this previously. So again, another convenience that Bill can use to his advantage to push Dipper into accepting the deal. And I'm not trying to be a fanboy here, but the way Bill makes these suggestions and misleads Dipper is very well done in my opinion. For example, the way he highlights the puppets, even though that's not at all his intentions for the deal, just to make Dipper think that he has the intention to use one of the sock puppets that are hanging there. And just a little detail, the timer in the background is counting down very fast, which could either be Bill's intentional doing or that the show just handles showing this timer like that. Of course, Bill has to overpromise a bit and tells Dipper that he will find out the secrets of the universe for just one puppet, which of course wouldn't be what happened. He would just find out the password for the computer. That is, of course, if Bill even intended to keep his end of the bargain. Spoiler alert, he won't. As the last argument, Bill brings up a point that I already made in a few episodes before this one. That is that Mabel did seem to ask Dipper quite often for something, that either being general help or that he will take a hit like in the episode with Armando, but in return, often she doesn't really commit to anything when he asks her for a favor. Like this episode, of course, brought up again. So this interaction seems to suggest that this was intentional throughout the whole show until this point, and that Mabel, which was of course always pretty evident, didn't mean any harm. When Dipper makes a deal, there are a few continuity errors with the countdown in the background. One of them being that the countdown was at 24 in the last close-up of it, but then when we get the zoom out when they make the deal, the countdown seems to count up instead of down. When it reaches 20, it goes back to 29 and then counts down again. And the last thing is that the countdown reaches 27 and then jumps to 17 and counts down from there. When Dipper flies down through the living room ceiling, we get a short glimpse into the empty space inside it, and the agents apparently left a little spy microphone in there. Yeah, Bill doesn't really know how to human. He opens a soda that's already opened. So of course Bill is searching for the journal to destroy it, and here the possession concept becomes a bit more interesting. We already went over the explanation the author gave in the physical journal, but the most important thing is that the memories are not retained. So basically the reason that Bill doesn't just know where the journal is because Dipper's memories left with his Mindscape Spectre version and aren't contained inside his physical brain. And that's at least the implications I get from this. So now moving on with the story, everybody wants to go see Mabel's puppet play, and I don't know how nobody's questioning this psycho laughter from Dipper. It seems like something everyone should notice when they're sitting in the car next to him, but they just don't, or they just ignore it. So now jumping forward to the play itself, in the first scene where Sock Mabel is played by Mabel, her sweater sleeve is clearly visible, but at max she can play one more puppet, so who plays the other ones? It's unlikely to be Grenda because she's standing on the side of the stage. So the only one left would be Candy, but there are way too many puppets for the two of them to handle. And how would this even work? How would they go around each other? What? Okay, moving way past Forearm Mabel to the point where Dipper finally confronts her about being evicted from his own body. He does so by basically possessing a sock puppet and projecting his voice through it. And frankly, I was pretty annoyed at how Mabel was made this oblivious. She would have definitely known how dangerous Bill is, and that he took over Dipper's body should absolutely confirm that. Her initially intending to put the show first and then deal with Dipper just seems really out of place in my opinion for the character that is Mabel, and just not like something she would do. In all fairness though, the puppet Dipper is pretty funny. After the conversation, Mabel decides to help Dipper and tries to get the journal while he still continues with the show. On the way there, of course, she meets Bipper, Bill Dipper, that's her name for him, not mine. And Bipper seems way stronger than the normal Dipper, or the cake and Mabel are very light, or maybe, considering previous escapades, Bipper can deactivate his muscle limiters and use Dipper's full 12-year-old strength. He basically lays out in front of her how she left Dipper hanging, and this seems to be the point the whole show led up to. Basically the final realization of how she left Dipper hanging a lot of times, and now with cracking the code, and that she then just took his help for granted. In past episodes I already commented on situations where Mabel, at least in my opinion, behaved negatively in regards to Dipper, and Bill also showed some of those scenes earlier when he tried to get Dipper to make a deal with him. But all of those things being said, I want to make one thing very clear. I do not hate Mabel or favor Dipper. Some of the things I criticized Mabel for also apply to him and are again brought up in this episode. For example, that he becomes very negligent when he's following his uncovering the mysteries obsession, similar to how Mabel is now obsessed with Gabe for this episode. So again, I really love all of these characters and I don't hate Mabel or Dipper or Stan, but I will still point out these things feelings if I think they are negative. Okay, moving on to the first time this episode where Bipper lets out a cry of pain when being hit with a journal. He never did that before, even when trying to crush his arm in a drawer while getting stabbed with forks. And that definitely has a really deep meaning, like the journal being his weakness, and I'm definitely not 100% overthinking this at all. Stan definitely has the right idea here, trying to make money off of the fight between two 12-year-olds, but somebody should really tell him how to use a camera. That one is either broken or he's holding it wrong because the screen is not visible to him like that. There's also some really awkward strangers touching hand stuff going on here. Now for the first time, Bill tells us what he really is, but it's not very descriptive. He just describes himself as a being of pure energy, whatever that's supposed to mean. Well, it doesn't really matter what he is because while he's possessing Dipper's body, the tickling works like earlier. And because I know you're a very perceptive viewer, you of course remember when I told you that this was very important foreshadowing. It might not look like it, but these tickles are very important foreshadowing for later on in the episode. So Dipper didn't really have any rest for the past few days, and this night he didn't sleep at all. So his body basically is giving up at this point, but that only happens right after Mabel tells him, and really quickly. Maybe he just didn't notice his lack of energy until this point. Though I found it a bit jarring how fast his exhaustion just takes over. With Pippa dropping to the floor, we get introduced to another possession quirk where the specter is evicted if the host just collapses. Though of course it doesn't include sleeping because he was able to get into Stan's head in the semi-finale. Speak of the devil, he switched from the first row to the seat in the second row. Continuing this trend of inconsistent positionings after everything fell apart, the twins aren't looking in the same direction as before. Well, of course, after nearly getting their heads exploded with fireworks, everyone's a bit disgruntled, including Gabe. So they just decide to leave, which doesn't seem to be a big deal for Mabel because Gabe is way more into puppets than he probably ought to be. The small little detail I wanted to mention is that the hair of the horse on Mabel's sweater was actually moved by her arm here, which absolutely wasn't necessary to animate, but they still did it and I commend them for it. We are ending this episode with Mabel sincerely apologizing to Dipper for leaving him hanging and rounding it up with a mystery twins fist bump. And now to do something I kind of missed in other episodes, taking a look at the notes the twins wrote inside the physical journal regarding what happened in this episode. This entry is written by Mabel with a few interesting tidbits, one of them being her theorizing about people being dead when they are possessed, which seems unlikely cause the body would still function normally as we saw, otherwise Bill probably wouldn't have been able to use the body at all. She also found a note from Bill in the car on the way back to the shack talking about Bill's plans to throw Dipper's body off the water tower. Generally I would consider that something that's not too heavy for the show, but then he continues to explain that nobody would be surprised that he threw himself off the tower because everyone would just think that he lost his mind, which seems completely psychotic, though it's Bill, so it's kind of fitting. The only one in that scenario that would have known that Dipper wasn't himself would have been Mabel, but Bill also asks her directly if she would like to join Dipper in the mind space, basically meaning that he would take her out as well. Which is even more deranged because he basically asks her if she would like to have her soul forcefully evicted from her body to join her brother in limbo. Hey, at least they didn't shy away from actually making him seem like a villain. Though we end this note on another wholesome apology. So to cap off this Mysteries of Gravity Falls, I wanted to go over the whole Bill can see the future thing that basically kills every argument, and I don't know why they included it because that would technically deny any chance of a happy ending for this show, but they did. And for that reason, I will mostly keep it out of any arguments, but I still point it out when it occurs. So I hope you enjoyed watching this episode. I certainly did. Even though the plot with the puppets might not have been the most interesting, I just like when Bill is involved in the episodes. So I hope you have an amazing rest of your day and to see you in the next episode of Mysteries of Gravity Falls. Until then, see ya!